Good morning, I'm Kenneth Moton.
And I'm Kaylee Hartung. Here are the top 5 things to know this Monday. Number 1, President Trump is celebrating the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
He said Baghdadi killed himself during a U.S. raid in Syria. A U.S. official says key information for the raid came after the arrest and interrogation of one of Baghdadi's wives and a courier.
Democrats are calling for a briefing, saying the Russians were briefed before congressional leadership. Number 2, the statewide emergency declared in California.
A massive wildfire in Northern California has more than doubled in size in the last 24 hours, destroying nearly 100 buildings. Another fire near L.A. is mostly contained, but winds are expected to whip it up today.
Nearly 200,000 people have been forced to evacuate their homes. On to number 3, President Trump got an earful when he was introduced at last night's World Series game in Washington. Fans booing, some were heard chanting, "Lock him up," and there was a sign reading, "Impeach Trump," hanging from a railing.
As for the game, the Astros hit 3 home runs on the way to winning their 3rd consecutive game against the Nationals. The final was 7-1. They can wrap up the series tomorrow in Houston. We head to Michigan for number 4. A high-tech promotional stunt ended up crash landing in someone's front yard.
This is part of Samsung's space selfie high-altitude balloon, which looks more like a satellite. It was supposed to take people's photos and merge them with a photo of the Earth.
The company says this was a soft landing and it was planned, but nobody told the people in rural Michigan.
So I looked out the windows and we saw it in the front yard. And we were just stunned. We just didn't even know what it was at first. It was flashing on the top and making noise, so we weren't sure what it was.
Another balloon carrying the device crashed into power lines a few miles away, knocking out electricity to that farm and blocking the road. Samsung says weather conditions resulted in an early soft landing in a selected rural area.
And finally, number 5, a new survey finding millennials are spending big money on Halloween, all to impress their friends on social media.
Shoppers are expected to spend an average of $86 on Halloween this year, and 48% of millennials admit to buying Halloween items just so they can include them in social media posts.
All for the gram. So, would you dress up for the gram? Or would you dress up just to go to a party and show off your costume?
Or I'm not dressing up at all this year. Oh, is that bad?
No, I mean...
Are you? You were at a wedding this weekend, so you didn't get in on the Halloween
but I saw
festivities
all
this
the
weekend.
costumes this weekend, out and about. I saw lots of...
shall we say...
very
the sort of thing you see on Halloween.
You know what?
People wearing things they maybe.
I stopped myself because people use Halloween to dress up like the craziest things, or what I guess whatever they want their dreams and wishes and fantasies to be. So we got some candy here. We're starting off the week.
And it's National Chocolate Day.
There you go.
So we got that started off.
You already
throughout the show. I'll just be over here with my
chomping on those
M&Ms. Yep.
Get them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pour some out for your homies.
But before we get to all of that, we do need to get right to the big story. The death of the world's most wanted terrorist, the founder of ISIS, blowing himself up in Syria as U.S. Special Operations Forces closed in on him.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi had been on the run for years, responsible for a string of atrocities, including the brutal beheadings of American hostages.
President Trump is now doing a victory lap after Baghdadi was cornered inside a secret compound. ABC's Megan Tavrizian has more on the mission and the big break that set it all into motion. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning, Kaylee and Kenneth. President Trump saying in addition to killing Baghdadi, the U.S. Special Forces took highly sensitive material from this raid having to do with ISIS and future plans.
The world's most wanted terrorist now dead. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi killed by members of the elite Delta Force in Syria Saturday night.
He was the founder and leader of ISIS, the most ruthless and violent terror organization anywhere in the world.
8 Chinook helicopters took off on the secret mission from a Kurdish-controlled area in Iraq, flying low and taking on gunfire before landing in northern Syria. Once on the ground, the special operations team blew holes in the side of Baghdadi's hideout, fearing the front door was booby-trapped. Baghdadi then fled into an underground tunnel with 3 children, then detonated a suicide vest.
He died after running into a dead-end tunnel whimpering and crying and screaming all the way.
Baghdadi was the founder of the Islamic State, responsible for horrific acts of terror, including setting people on fire and beheadings. Among his victims, Americans James Foley, Stephen Sotloff, Peter Kassig, and Kayla Mueller. The mission was named in Kayla's honor, the humanitarian worker Baghdadi repeatedly raped before she was killed.
Those men and women that put their lives on the line, basically on our behalf and on behalf of the American people, we owe them our sincere thanks.
Meantime, an aide for House Speaker Pelosi says the Russians were briefed on the raid before congressional leadership. President Trump claims he kept the Democrats in the dark because he wanted to make sure it was kept secret. Kenneth.
Megan, thank you. We appreciate it. And the Special Operations Forces were able to close in on Baghdadi thanks to the hard work of the CIA and Kurdish partners.
For more on Baghdadi and how the operation played out, ABC's Brad Milkey has the details.
That's right. Remember, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was not just the figurehead of ISIS. He personally raped, tortured, and had people murdered, including the American Kayla Mueller. And this operation by American forces was named after her. American officials say this all began with a tip that led to a part of Syria near the Turkish border. That's when the elite Delta forces began rehearsing for the mission to take out Baghdadi. Now, ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz actually watched President Trump's announcement alongside the defense secretary, Mark Esper. She walked me through how this all went down.
So they have been tracking him for weeks. And when they finally got the go-ahead from President Trump, and it was President Trump who had to give that order, 8 Chinook helicopters took off from Kurdish territory in Iraq, secretly flying low over into northern Syria. They did take some gunfire. Then they land. They head towards the hideout, and Baghdadi runs, according to the president, into a tunnel. And as the U.S. forces approach, he's wearing a suicide vest. He has 3 children by his side who he's dragged along with him through this tunnel, and he detonates that suicide vest and blows himself up, killing the children as well.
The call that came into the Situation Room at 7:15 was 100% confirmation, jackpot, over. We'll have more on what Baghdadi's death means for the Middle East on Start Here later this morning. Listen on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting app. Kenneth, Kaylee.
Thanks, Brad. Now to the state of emergency in California this morning. Powerful winds are fueling wildfires and burning tens of thousands of acres. Nearly 200,000 people have been evacuated as firefighters lose ground in their battle against the state's biggest fire.
This morning, fighting the fires across California.
This is just one small, tiny portion of this fire.
In Sonoma County, the Kincade fire has exploded to at least 55,000 acres as flames spread in hurricane-force winds. More than 180,000 people have been evacuated, and the fire has destroyed nearly 100 buildings, including this winery, which opened in 1869. Reporter Cornell Barnard with our San Francisco station got a look at the damage.
This is completely gone. Tons of corrugated metal here. This is the facade of the winery. Pretty much all that is left, brick facade that says Soda Rock in front of it.
Many Santa Rosa residents and their pets are taking shelter at the Sonoma County Fairgrounds.
To think of it coming through Healdsburg and Windsor and into Santa Rosa, that's a little like overwhelming and scary, you know, that it could be that big. You don't want it to be that big.
Officials say their biggest concern is the Kincade fire jumping the 101 freeway, igniting an area that hasn't burned in nearly 80 years.
If anything does start on the opposite side of 101, the west side, that area hasn't seen any fire history since the 1940s. So the fuels in that area are extremely dense, they're extremely old and decadent, and they're extremely dry.
In Southern California, residents are returning home now that the tick fire in Santa Clarita is mostly contained. But that area just north of Los Angeles is expecting more high winds this morning. And now the state's power companies are warning of a third round of preventative blackouts, saying 500,000 customers could lose power this week to prevent more fires from sparking.
Red flag warnings are in place today for most of the state.
Some other news we're watching this morning. House Democrats conducting the impeachment inquiry are hoping to hear today from one of President Trump's closest advisors.
Charles Kupperman, who was a top deputy of ousted National Security Advisor John Bolton, may be a no-show. He filed a lawsuit asking the court to decide whether he should testify or follow White House orders to defy a House subpoena. Meanwhile, former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly said before stepping down, he said that he advised the president that he could avoid impeachment by not surrounding himself with yes men.
Someone has got to be the guy that tells you that, you either have the authority or you don't, or, Mr. President, don't do it because whatever, but don't hire someone that will just, nod and say, that's a great idea, Mr. President, because you will be impeached.
The president insists Kelly never said anything like that to him, saying he would have thrown him out of the office if he had.
Police in North Texas are seeking information about a pair of weekend shootings, one deadly. Dozens of shots were fired in Dallas last night at a vigil for a man killed at a college homecoming party in Greenville Saturday. One other person was killed at that party and 12 were injured. Police believe the shooter targeted his first victim, then fired randomly before escaping in the chaos.
And turning now to the intense search for a missing Alabama college student. 19-year-old Anaya Blanchard was last seen Wednesday after telling her roommate she was out with a guy. Her SUV was later found in Montgomery, about 50 miles from her home, the car damaged with dents. Blanchard is the stepdaughter of UFC fighter Walt Harris. He and Blanchard's mother are pleading for the public's help. A friend says there were no signs that anything was amiss, and she says disappearing like this is out of character for Blanchard.
A radical proposal could change a nearly millennium-old tradition for Roman Catholic priests. Some bishops are recommending that married men in the Amazon be ordained as priests. It's to address a severe shortage in the South American rainforest and would only apply to that region. Pope Francis expects to make a decision by the end of the year.
And a small space shuttle is now back on the ground after more than 2 years in orbit. The U.S. Air Force's X-37B spaceplane touched down at the Kennedy Center 780 days after it was launched there. No one was aboard for the record-setting flight. The Air Force isn't saying much about what it did carry other than multiple experiments and satellites.
Okay.
And we're getting a look this morning at the most expensive Scotch in the world.
Scotch. A bottle of Macallan 1926 just sold at auction for nearly $1.9 million.
Casual.
It was distilled in 1926 and bottled in 1986. Only 40 bottles of it were produced.
Given the price tag, it works out to about $100,000 per shot. That is more expensive than a Porsche 911, like the one you see there.
So if you had that bottle and they started singing shots, shots, shot, 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 shots.
Don't.
And you're like, shot, one shot. We all need to have a collection for this one shot.
I'm willing to go do the research, the work to determine if it's worth the price.
Yes, this network will pay $100,000 per shot for you to do that story, I'm sure.
Yeah, right.
Coming up, new violence in Hong Kong. Protesters clashed with police overnight, even after the controversial extradition bill was withdrawn.
Plus, the multi-million-dollar masterpiece hanging in a kitchen for years. We'll go across the pond for more after this. Now to a developing story from Washington. A congresswoman facing a nude photo scandal is resigning after being accused of having inappropriate relationships with her staffers.
Katie Hill is already facing an ethics investigation for one of her alleged relationships. All of this playing out during what's being described as a nasty divorce. This morning, a rising star in the Democratic Party resigning from office.
My name is Katie Hill, and I'm running for Congress here in California's 25th District.
California Congresswoman Katie Hill is stepping down after allegations of inappropriate sexual relationships with staffers. Writing in a statement, "This is the hardest thing I ever had to do, but I believe it is the best thing for my constituents, my community, and our country." Hill, who is the first openly bisexual member of Congress, admits to having a consensual relationship with a member of her campaign staff. But the House Ethics Committee is investigating whether Hill had a sexual relationship with a member of her congressional staff, which would be a violation of House rules.
This is when we take our democracy back.
Hill ousted Republican Stephen Knight in the 2018 midterm elections, flipping her district for the Democrats for the first time since 1990. At the time, Nancy Pelosi called the 32-year-old a bright vision for the future.
What is your hope when you land in D.C.?
Well, playing nice isn't really something that's kind of like in my vocabulary. I just do what I think is right.
Hill has said she's in the middle of a nasty divorce, accusing her husband of leaking nude pictures of her and the campaign staffer, saying he is, quote, determined to try to humiliate me. The couple allowed cameras from Vice Media to follow her run for office for a documentary called Inside the Most Millennial Campaign Ever.
You're not there for people that you care about anymore.
In her statement Sunday, Hill called her husband abusive and also blamed, quote, hateful political operatives who she said were driving a smear campaign built around cyber exploitation. Hill's estranged husband did not immediately comment on her accusations. Hill continues to deny the relationship with her congressional staffer.
Now to Hong Kong, where protesters clashed with police again overnight, this time in a major tourism district. Demonstrators started a fire at a subway entrance and barricaded roads as police used tear gas and water cannons. Let's go to our foreign correspondent, Julia McFarlane, across the pond in the London Bureau for the very latest. Good morning, Julia.
Morning, Kaylee. Here we are again. This is the 21st consecutive weekend of protests in Hong Kong. Yet again, as you say, we saw violent, ugly scenes, clashes between protesters and riot police. Now, as you mentioned briefly there, the controversial extradition bill, which was the spark that set off these protests a few months ago, earlier this summer, that has been withdrawn. But the reason we are still seeing these clashes is that the unrest and the anger of protesters has morphed into something bigger. There has been a lot, activists say there has been a lot of police aggression. They are now protesting against police tactics. And of course, when all those riot police line the streets to meet the protesters every weekend for their weekly appointment, it seems, that kind of consolidates their grievances. Don't forget that an 18-year-old who was shot by officers with a live round, he's just been charged with intentional wounding for a slashing attack because he attacked that officer with a metal pole. So both sides are becoming even more entrenched. But I just want to bring you a quote, a protester speaking to AP. He said the reason they are still protesting is because, he says, the problem is much more than before. We see the future is controlled by China. We see all the rules and even the law is starting to be controlled by Beijing.
All right, Joanne, in Pakistan, we know that hundreds of buses carrying thousands of supporters of an ultra-religious opposition party began a procession to the capital of Islamabad. The party's leader is calling the current prime minister's government illegitimate and called for its removal. So what does this mean for Imran Khan there?
Yeah, so this is a party led by a former opposition leader. And this convoy, it's extraordinary because there's hundreds of buses and vehicles making this long convoy. And they are making a journey from Karachi, hundreds of miles away, and they're heading towards the capital, Islamabad. Now, Imran Khan, he swept to power just over a year ago, and he was a populist leader. He was hugely popular when he first took office, but he's been really struggling with Pakistan's ailing economy, and he's had to go back on several campaign pledges. He's had to, he said he would rather die than seek money from the IMF. He's had to go and do that now. Interesting analysis from the BBC says that his government has had to date only achieved 3 out of 34 pledges it made when it came to power. Now, he's gone from being a really popular cultural icon in Pakistan to being this leader who is now really struggling to lead the country. But as you can see, hundreds and hundreds of people are taking part in this very visual demonstration of anger at how he is doing so far. So pressure really mounting on him. He's not said a word yet on these protests.
Let's take a turn to a visual element that just put a lot of money in the bank for a woman in France. Okay, I can't even wrap my mind around this. This old painting was hanging in this woman's kitchen for years.
Yep, years.
Sold at auction for more than $26 million. Can you explain why it's so valuable?
Guys, this is just one of those beautiful, like, serendipity moments, isn't it? This elderly lady in the French countryside of Compiègne, she had someone looking around her house to value her house, and this person spotted the painting and suggested that she talk to an auctioneer to have it valued. Now, it turned out to be a masterpiece attributed to the 13th century Italian painter Cimabue. Now, he has got paintings hanging up in the Frick Collection in New York and the National Gallery in London. He's a big name in the art world. But guys, it just goes to show, you know, don't chuck anything out. Right? I mean, you've got no idea what could be hanging up in your closet or in your attic.
So wait, so now you want us to all be hoarders?
I'm just trying to justify my own, like, mad habits of hoarding everything. I cannot throw anything out. It's a disease. I can't.
Right.
And the stories like this don't help me change my ways.
Okay, wait, Julia.
But maybe one day. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. Okay, so our question of the day has to do with Halloween costumes. Would you buy one just for the gram, like just to take a photo and post on social media? Because studies show 48% of millennials are buying Halloween costumes just for the sake of social media.
Guys, I have a very sad story about this. I did actually buy a Wonder Woman costume like 6 months ago, but I can confirm that my Halloween outfit this year was very, very convincing. It was a journalist showing up to work because she works weekends.
There it is.
So that was my costume.
Well, you had a really busy weekend, obviously, with the Baghdadi news, and I actually saw your.
It was mad yesterday.
One of your posts of, I think you had like a meme of Obama or something.
I loved it. Yeah. After RSVPing no to every Halloween party.
Do you know, I posted that after just seeing on my feed all of these endless pictures of people with incredibly imaginative costumes, having a great time as I was sort of just getting up for work early in the morning thinking, well, you know, I got my sleep, but maybe next year.
You weren't pretending to be one. You're an actual journalist, and we appreciate you there from across the pond.
It was a convincing costume.
It's
my
very
best
convincing.
Yet. Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Fred. We appreciate it.
See you tomorrow.
All right, let's check our notifications now, starting with a dad going all out for Halloween, building this awesome Millennium Falcon for his sons. He did a great job.
Very cool.
If that's for the gram, I'm here for it.
Yeah, right? These kids post that everywhere.
Yeah.
I hope they're getting all the candy. And what kind of speed do you think they can pick up? We see them going downhill right
going
there.
Going pretty fast there. Get a little wave in.
Okay, that's adorable.
Hey, next up, this strange scene from off the coast of Australia.
Yeah, well, there was two sharks.
You're about to see a female great white shark right there, belly up, showing it off, right behind a charter boat. It's considered extremely rare for a shark to swim like that. Some biologists say it's an example of the shark putting itself in a relaxed, trance-like state, but others dispute that.
I think it's just showing off its giant teeth.
Just showing off.
Before it
swimming away.
Hops right up and takes somebody's hand off. And coming up, we will tell you what's to come as we start this week on a Monday.
Plus the new take on the classic alphabet song that's getting rid of elemental P. Say it ain't so. After this. Here's what to watch out for today. President Trump travels to Chicago to speak at the International Association of Chiefs of Police annual conference and exposition, where he is scheduled to sign an executive order.
House Democrats are hoping to hear from a top deputy of ousted National Security Advisor John Bolton. But Charles Kupperman may be a no-show. He filed a lawsuit asking the court to decide whether he should testify or follow White House orders to defy a congressional subpoena.
A legal battle over Missouri's only abortion clinic starts this week. The state's Administrative Hearing Commission will hear arguments over whether state health officials acted improperly when they refused to renew the clinic's license.
Classes are once again canceled for Chicago public school students as the teacher strike hits day 11. Negotiations continue, but city officials say a large gap remains between the two sides. Teachers are seeking higher salaries, smaller class sizes, and more support staff.
Plus, don't forget to tune into The Debrief for an update on all our top stories in the briefing room for a breakdown of the latest headlines in politics. And finally from us on this Monday morning, the new alphabet song that's getting mixed reviews.
Yeah, you could say that again. This version aims to get rid of the confusing or infamous LMNOP and make it clearer for kids. Take a listen.
B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V.
Wow.
The new song was created by DreamEnglish.com. It's a website that aims to, quote, make educational music that is enjoyable to listen to.
So that's our question of the day. Do you think this is helpful to children learning to read, or should we stick with the classic version? where out of the 26 letters, they only know about 20 of them because we go through element of P? Tell us what you think in the comments or tweet us at ABC News Live. Let us know. What do you think?
You know, as we've both sung along to this new version of the song, we haven't made it past you. Like,
all right.
I want to hear how it ends. What's that level that you end the last couple of letters
because
on?
you saw rhyme and everything else
Right?
with the now
How do
I
you
know
flow?
my ABCs.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think this will stick. I don't think it will
I don't
stick.
think there's any way.
Yeah.
It's worked for generations. We turned out all right.
Why mess with a good thing? All right, that's it for us today. It's great to see you. Thanks for watching us.
Thanks for starting your Monday with us.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a great week.